Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the mark scheme on the right hand side and the paper on the left. These letters tell you what you get your marks for. So here you get 1 mark for writing one of the following. A lot of you lost the marks because you didn't put the square root over the whole fraction. You just put it over the numerator. You then get your next mark for writing the unrounded version, and then you get your 3rd mark for writing 474. So let's assume our answer to this is 474. You're lucky in this exam because they're in brackets. If you get the answer, in general I gave you the overall full marks, but this is not always the case. Now, 1b, correct the nearest integer. So for this particular question, it has already been corrected to the nearest integer by correcting it to the nearest decimal place. So you just copy down the same answer again. What I used for this was a follow-through mark. So a follow-through mark means if you wrote a different answer here, so if you wrote something like 5693.7, you would get your follow-through mark for writing 5694. The nearest integer requires you to write it to the nearest whole number. So you inspect the last whole number or the number in the units column and you see if that stays the same or goes up 1. So for this example, on the right hand side you can see the 3 means it will go up because the 7 next door to it instructs it to do so. Let's go into 1c. Now this was standard form. Most of you understood how to do this, and you can do this quite easily on the calculator. So if I get the calculator up, and I'm going to try and open it now, and it's not unfortunately worked. So let's open the calculator. Once I've opened the calculator, we'll be able to see how to answer this question. So I'm going to minimize this in a moment, and I'm going to move the calculator over here. So all you have to do is type in 474 into the calculator and it'll do it for you. But before you do that, you need to click Y equals, and at the moment it's in the wrong mode. So I'm going to go back, I'm going to quit off this and I'm going to click mode, and at the moment it's in sequence mode. So I'm going to put the arrow down and I'm going to select so it's in function mode. But we actually want it in scientific mode. So here it says SCI. So I'm going to go down to SCI. I'm going to click enter. Perfect. Now I can click quit. And now it's in sequence mode. Not sequence mode, I mean standard form. So we're going to type in 474 and we're going to click enter. And it rewrites it as 4.74 E2. So if I type here 4.74 E2, and that would be our answer, but not quite. What's missing from this answer is that we are supposed to write it in this format, a times 10 to the power of something. So I'm going to write it as 4.74, which is the first bit already, and instead of writing e to the power of 2, I'm going to write times by 10 to the power of 2. And our answer is simply that. If you have a look in the mark scheme then for this question, again you get a follow through mark. So if you wrote the wrong thing in part B, you would get the mark if you then wrote it in standard form. Let's go on to question 2. Now this was combining both M5 knowledge of 2A and standard form. So 2a is going to be here on the mark scheme, and this is what you are required to write. 4.8 times 10 to the power of 8 times 2.5. And having a look carefully, you get 1 mark, which is quite a lot really, for just writing this. Or if you're unable to write that, you get 1 mark for multiplying something by 2.5. This is then our answer. So, if we have a look at what to do, it says last year a South American candy factory sold 4.8 times 10 to the power of 8 sweets. Each sweet has a diameter of 2.5. Well, you can see that in the picture, but it's worth reading this information. The factory is producing an advert showing all of these sweets placed in a straight line. So these dots at the end tell us that this line goes on forever and ever and ever until we've got 4.8 times 10 to the power 8 lots of these sweets. So we've got over 4 million sweets. So some people thought we just had 4. So some people in the exam wrote down the following. Four times by 2.5. And that's not the right answer, because we want to find out not just how long 4 sweets are, we want to find out how long 4.8 times 10 to the power of 8 sweets long are. So what I need to do is I need to take the pink information and I need to multiply it by the yellow information. So 4.8 times by 10 to the power of 8, and then I'm going to say times by 2.5. And again, all we need to do is type this in the calculator. We haven't actually practiced multiplying standard form, but it's really quite easy. So I'm going to type in 4.8 times by 10 to the power of 8. So I use this arrow upwards. And then I'm going to press the right arrow to make it come down. Times by 2.5. Enter. 1.2e9. So I'm going to write down, rather than 1.2e9, 1.2 times 10 to the power of 9. And that is our answer. And double checking with the mark scheme, we will see the following. The answer is 1.2 times 10 to the power of 9. Right, now we're going to go on to 2b. 2b is a completely different question, although it looks like it's a continuation. So it says the advert claims that the length of this line is x times the length of the Amazon River. So actually this part of the statement is irrelevant for the next question. So I'll cross it out for now. The length of the Amazon River is 6,400 kilometres. Write down the length in centimetres. So most of you got this question. So to convert from kilometres to centimetres, we take the number, which is 6,400, and we just multiply it first of all by 1,000 and then by 100. So I'm going to do the following. 6,400 times by 1,000 times by 100. And the mark scheme gives you 2 answers. You can either do it in standard form or not in standard form. So I'm going to actually keep my calculator the same. As in, I'm going to keep it in the same format because it doesn't specify whether to give it into standard form or not. So once I've typed that in the calculator, you will see the following is going to happen. Minimise this so it's the right width. and we're going to type in 6,400 times by 1,000 times by 100, and that gives us 6.4 e to the power of 8. So it's going to be 6.4 times by 10 to the power of 8, which is the same as saying 6.4 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10, 8 times. Now we need to go back to the original part of the question, which I've crossed out for part C. So I'm going to highlight that in green because we're looking at part C now. The advertisement claims that the length of this line is X times the length of the Amazon River. So I'm going to go back up to the line. At the moment, I'm aware that these are both written in centimetres. So that's written in centimetres. And this question, which I've answered up here, A, is also written in centimetres. So I'm going to take this amount and I'm going to write down, this is the length of the line. And I'm going to actually write this in my solutions because I'll remember what I'm doing. And then I'm going to decide, well, we know that this value here is smaller. And the reason why is it says the length of this line, which is this line here, is X times. It must be bigger if X is positive. So we're going to say that in order for us to get to the red number, which we're going to call the length of the line, from the light blue number, we need to multiply by X. So this multiplied by X gives us the length of the line. Right, so in the exam you don't actually need to write this, but for me I need to write this down to understand what's going on. So I'm going to form an equation. So we're going to say X lots of 6.4 times 10 to the power of 8 is the same as 1.2 times 10 to the power of 9. Now this is just a simple solving equation question. We're going to say the following, that we've got X times something equals this. So all we need to do to find X is write down the right hand side of the equation, which is 1.2 times 10 to the power of 9 and we need to divide it by whatever is currently on the left hand side. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to put it here. And it's really important when you're not sure how to type into the calculator, you just put in extra brackets because it's better to be safe rather than sorry. So we're going to put this into brackets. And then I'm going to type this into the calculator. So getting the calculator up, I'm going to just type in 1. And before I type in 1, I'm going to clear it because I want to put the brackets like I suggested. 1.2 times by 10 to the power of 9, close brackets. And if you can see, when I've closed brackets, it's small, and that's a problem. So I need to delete what I've just done, and I need to press the arrow right. And I'm going to delete again, arrow right, right, there we go. It's now a large number rather than a power, close brackets. So I've pressed 9 rather than close brackets. And then I'm going to put divide. And then we want to divide by the whole other bracket, which is 6.4 times by 10 to the power of 8. Close brackets, enter. And I get 1.875 e to the power of 0. 1.875 times 10 to the power of 0. And what you've got to be aware is if something's to the power of 0, it's just the same as timesing it by 1. Let's check with the solutions. 1.875, perfect. So we can just leave as 1.875. And it wants us to leave it in a format which we can understand. It wouldn't make sense to write it in this format because times 10 to the power of 0 does not mean anything. But if you didn't know this,